Ladies and gentlemen, the big deal gets bigger as Mr. Raju has authored a magical book named Magical Selling, Engineering Enterprise Sales Success on any team, in any industry, in any economy. My God, could the title get any better? Mr. Raju, firstly, many congratulations on the successful launch of your creation. Many congratulations for that.
Thank you.
And in one line, if you could tell us, what is your most favorite quote from your very own handwritten book, sir?
My quote is obviously I'm in the vendor position. I may be selling a drill bit, but customer is buying a hole. So we got to understand what they're doing and align with those realities.
Fantastic, Mr. Raju. I think just hearing that, the first thing I'll do post this session is grab that book of yours. Amazing book, Magical Selling, and absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much again. Stage is all yours.
Thank you. Can I share my screen?
Please do, sir. Yeah.
Hi, everyone, and thank you, Nikita, for that introduction. Great to be here. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the session on multidimensional data observability for modern data infrastructure. We are digging here into the digital revolution and the impact and the incredible impact it's having in every part of our lives. And without question, data is a big driver of so much of what's going on today. We all have that well understood in your respective roles. Khushi, can you move to the next slide, please? Let me lay the groundwork first, kind of reflecting back on time. In my mind, there are three main tenets of data in the world of data management. They pretty much don't change. The first one is that data volumes keep growing in size and complexity. That seems to be always true. The second is business leaders are always looking for new ways to extract value from data, and they realize that they really haven't mastered that. And so it's an ongoing process. And the third one is it's all about data reliability, its security and governance. It's just so vital that it has to be a part of the conversation, and mistakes are costly when you don't get it right. These are the three main tenets. I'm talking about them today. We could talk about them, say, 10 years from now, and probably still true, and they were true 20 years ago also. Let's go to the next slide, please. Now, how does that translate into what organizations are going through these days? A few years ago, it was very common for organizations to have data in a much more simplistic manner. What I mean by that is mostly they were all batch processing. Get your reports, do your thing, and things are good. So in order to run those kind of systems, you could monitor a few things, get some few alerts, especially at the application layer, etc. And that was good to start with. However, in the modern data architecture, things are a lot more complicated, and applications are simply not the only things to look for. You've got to have many other use cases for which you need to cater the monitoring and observability. By that, I mean there are many use cases, such as not just batch use cases like yesteryears, but think of it like streaming use cases, the IoT and all those kind of things, right? Streaming use cases, machine learning use cases, and real-time use cases and ad hoc use cases. When you bring all these things together and they're growing at a very rapid pace and ever accelerating, it calls for a different set of an approach for all people managing these kind of data sets, whether it's on-premise or on cloud or multi-cloud, which is fast becoming a reality in most organizations, if it is not already done. And as a result, the complexity goes up. Can we go to the next slide, please? Let's peel the system. Let's peel one more layer here. When I say the use cases are increasing and expanding and growing at a very rapid pace, what it also means is that it brings a lot of new technologies onto the fore. Meaning, some are on the cloud, there's new technologies, and organizations really have, sort of a, issue here with One, the old technologies, the previous era technologies, which we call immovables, like your ERP systems, like your billing applications, like your manufacturing MES systems, and so on and so forth. And on the other side is the set of irresistibles with new technologies that are typically more secure, more scalable, easy to use, and therefore effectively lower costs. And you have to find a way to combine these two things. Now imagine with the growth of these technologies and a combination of technologies as well as the processes, it's very hard to have the necessary skills to be able to develop a meaningful set of things. And it could quickly lead to inefficiencies. Many times customers go to the cloud or multi-cloud and they realize, hey, I had so many blind spots that led me to run systems which are far too expensive than what I started off. They are far too complex and I'm not getting enough manpower to manage these things. So those were some of the conversations that are having. And one way to simplify all that is to be able to see things clearly. That's where AccelData is born. That's what AccelData does for a living. And it's a premise that if we can see things clearly and soon enough, your ability to fix them, your ability to do course corrections, and your ability to do optimization along the way is a step change in what you did in the past. It's like, there's light now and you could see things clearly. Can we move to the next slide, please? So what did AccelData do in order to expand and improve the ability to bring in data observability for any organization and use that as a linchpin or the cornerstone to power digital transformation? I'll start at the bottom. The bottom one is called Pulse. So you have these data platforms. Some are on premise, some are on cloud, some are on multiple clouds. Think of it as your data lakes or lake houses or warehouses, data warehouses, and so on and so forth. So these are some of the things where we bring in a significant amount of value with data observability. What are all the things that are moving in? There are many moving technology parts in there, and there are day-to-day availability SLA issues that people are looking at. The data engineers are trying to find out why a certain query is slower than usual, why some data is not coming in on time, and so on and so forth. So this is, think of it like an MRI machine for a person who wants to check out what's wrong, and it gives a level of clarity that's required. That's the first part. I'll take you through those details. Khushi, can you just go to the next slide, please? Now, what is the benefit of doing this? Think of it like this: 80–90% of what organizations do are the basic activities, such as operational activities, such as, hey, that data didn't come in. There is, every day a certain report or a certain algorithm used to run in, let's say, 1 hour, but today it's slower. These are the kind of usual problems associated with it, and organizations tend to be reactive in those situations, wherein somebody calls up, you go ahead, try to find out under the bonnet what's going on, and then try to do troubleshooting, etc. And these are like, if you want to do a parallel, it's like a common cold, it's like the basic flu and all those kind of things that we usually see the patients for, which you don't really need a super specialty person looking at it. It's more like, hey, take some tablets and so on and so forth. And then the real work is at the top end when some really real optimizations are required. So what we noticed is that we had 80–90% is a commonly seen improvement in the number of times these issues are happening, the incidents are happening, and your ability to troubleshoot, get to the root cause analysis, and so on and so forth. And then because you're able to see these things, your ability to fix those things, do resource allocations based on that, or plan scaling and other efforts based on that is very high. And we have seen a significant improvement in costs of these platforms. Could be in any of the big cloud providers, could be the specialty cloud providers, or some of them are on premise. Next slide, please. And like I mentioned, in complexity, if you see things clearly, that's the first improvement that you can bring. Makes it reliable, makes it predictable, meaning you don't react, you tend to become more proactive. There are a couple of things here. One is the ability to see things. The second is the ability to do something about things that are changing. For instance, if something is not working, can you build AI-led approach decision-making into it, maybe 10%, maybe 20%, maybe 30% of the time, to make sure these kind of issues can be automated and you don't really have to waste people resources or time or anything else, or SLAs for that matter, so business continues on their own way. Next slide, please. How do we go about doing that? We have seen this evidence in many customers in the region. Some of them you recognize, some of them are not yet here, but we see a significant improvement in the past couple of years, especially where every organization is looking at higher level of automation and lower cost that can be achieved by optimization. Next slide, please. How does that work out? So think of it like when you get the issues such as, think of a situation where today the query did not come out properly, or it's got delayed and it's been an hour or 6 hours and then it's not showing up. In a normal scenario, you would get a call and you would go take a look at what parameters have changed. That could easily take a couple of hours, maybe 3-4 hours. Whereas if you are able to get the entire telemetry data of the infra, of the compute, of the data, as well as the algorithm, and it is stitched together by these AI-powered dashboards and so on, that can be easily customizable and expanded, then you get to look at that with a sort of a superpower, because you're able to see the same thing through different windows, different points of view. And as a result, your ability to fix those things and get to the root is very, very simple. So instead of 3 or 4 hours, if you can do it in 3 clicks or 4 clicks or 5 clicks, like a couple of minutes, then that's the step change. That's 10 times better, 20 times better in many cases. And that translates into significant business benefits. The next one, please. Similarly, you can then, once you do these things, and let's say and we had a customer which had 160 incidents that they tracked the year before, and then those number of incidents have now reduced into 40, which is a 75% improvement. How did that happen? Out of all those 160, we then identify the areas that could have easily been fixed. We don't have to be reactive. We just need to find out a way to be proactive, and that information is now clearly visible on the screen. So you now build in some rules for that. You build in some approaches to that, which is easier, and therefore there's a rapid fall in the rate of incidents, especially in service severity 1 kind of requests. Severity 1 kind of request means there's a production downtime, and what used to be once a month used to come down to once a year, or even less than once a year, once or twice in every couple of years. A significant benefit. Can we move to the next slide, please? So when you go for the cloud, and when you look at some of these cloud deployments, they bring in immediate benefits such as ability to scale and ability for people to use the platform without having to go through a lot of lead times. Those are the positives. But if you don't build the guardrails of how to scale, now imagine somebody running the same report 100 times because it's easy and the scalability is available, you're going to end up with a sticker shock of the bill that's coming in. Therefore, you need some of these guardrails to say, how do you optimize the capacity? How do you make sure that the thing that's working on is being taken care of? So if you have a certain set of data, such as, I don't know, let's say web links or structured information, NoSQL databases, if you're a little technical, and generally documents and all those kind of information, they are better optimized for specific data platforms. And you should be able to organize those things and optimize the data processing. If you're able to do that, 50% to 80% is very, very commonly achievable. Khushi, can you go to the next slide, please? Now let's look at, that was the first part. Look at the platform. You're probably running EMR, you're probably running Databricks, you're probably running other solutions out there. But then the second part is, how do you ensure that data that's in those data platforms is reliable? And your data platform may be working perfectly fine, but if your data coming in is incomplete, for instance, everything that you do in that data is not going to be useful. What does that mean? Anything that you do will cost you money, but the output is not coming out. So at what stage do you know whether the data that is coming to the platform is reliable or not? At what stage do you know where is that problem, and what do you do about that problem? Let's take the next slide. I'll start talking about that one in the next slide. Khushi. Now, here's one of the customers, largest customers on the planet. They're looking at shift left kind of an approach. What does that mean? A lot of times when you have a data platform or a data lake, data warehouse, or a lake house these days, you're looking at the data is going in there, but it's not clean. So if it's not clean, it's not reliable. So at what stage do you bring in that ability to clean the data? So the approach that a lot of customers are taking is that whatever data is coming in needs to be clean before it comes into the data aspect, right? And that's what we look at, and that empowers the data lake to be used better. Can we move to the next slide, please? So think of a situation where, can we move to the next slide, please? Yeah, and then and next slide. So what do? We look at all the data sets that are coming in, making sure that using your improved AI-based algorithms, etc., to be able to scan everything, to be able to tell beforehand that a certain data is unclean or incomplete, and therefore make decisions based on that, and tell the end users, for instance, to use, let's say, the previous day's data or the previous week's data, or if one country data doesn't come in, you can then ask people to use the existing data sets that are available, or the remainder of the data sets that are available, and make sure that the companies are able to deliver, the use cases are able to delivered by each of those in each of those situations. When we do this at scale, when we do that without too many of people required, too many of skills required, and it can be done. It can be done in real time. Or in the streaming use cases, etc., that brings about a very step change. Let's go a little sooner. I think I'm running short of time. Khushi, please move forward. So we automate and we make it extensible and the ability to comprehend for each and every individual looking at that. The next slide, please. How does this impact different data personas in the system? Data stewards, the officers, the engineers, and the analysts can improve their working relationship with each other. Interdepartmental friction is minimized and eliminated in most cases, depending on at what level of maturity your organization is, but it can start happening within a couple of weeks' time from the deployment duration. Can we go to the next slide, please? So to sum it up, these are the final two slides. Automated data profiling, wherever it is, the anomaly detection such as schema drift or data drift kind of scenarios, which are very common, and see it from a variety of points of view at the same time, and not a keyhole kind of a view, a silo kind of a view, that is then stitched together for easy understanding for interdepartmental personas, as well as interdepartmental use cases for people to make better decisions. The final slide, the next one. Like I just mentioned, you can reconcile the data, alert, and then you deploy using various variety of APIs that allows everyone to improve that 80 to 90% of operational time on a day-to-day basis. So that brings me to the end of the messaging. It is built on the premise that if you see things clearly, instead of a hazy picture or it's dark out there, you're feeling your way, a little slowly and cautiously. By seeing things clearly, your ability to bring in change and lower the costs, reduce the amount of downtime, and improve on the manpower required to fix anything goes up significantly. And don't be surprised if it improves by 10x compared to day-to-day operations without a clear data observability. So that ends my slide. Thank you everyone for listening. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to take those right now.
Fantastic session, Mr. Raju. And of course, the tradition that we follow at 𝐝𝐲. A big round of applause, and we would love for you to applaud yourselves along with us. Thank you so much, Mr. Raju. Like you mentioned, there is a question from Aldrich Chen, who writes in, as we accelerate towards automation and data insights, how can we position ourselves as human enablers pushing businesses ahead in this decade? A fantastic question for a fantastic speaker.
Yeah. So when you look at yourself, you can just start by asking yourself a question. What are the things today that I'm doing in a reactive mode? Meaning I think things are running and something comes up. How often does it come up and how complex is it on a day-to-day basis? That's where you want to start. Because if you're able to see things coming, you're able to move things and make better decisions. So make a list of all those items. And from those items that you're reactive today, ask yourself a question where, if I had a magic wand today, what would I have seen or what would I like to see beforehand so that I don't have to wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning? I don't have to figure out, I'm in a, sports or some other thing with my kids or doing something else on the weekend. But then suddenly, so if you make the list out, I can tell you in my experience, we can eliminate 50% of those right away. The technology is available that allows you to look like a Superman at the end of it. And all it takes is deploying some of these new age solutions. So that would be my quick short answer, but we can go into specifics if you like.
Fantastic, Mr. Raju. And just like your book, what a magical session it was. Thank you so very much for your time. Thank you, sir.